Okay, click on register. Perfect. So only the people who are giving access, only those people can see this. Okay. So the assignments or whatever that I'm going to give, that will be reflect here.
Okay.
If you have any questions or if you have any assignment that you want to post to me, so there is something called a discussions. Can you go and click on the discussions? Okay, I can create a new discussion here. I can start posting to it.
Okay.
Everyone on the group can start looking into this one. Okay, so now go and click on these modules. The left hand side modules will be this. See? Okay, this is a sample section. Every day the session that what I am going to conduct, the class notes will be available there,
Okay.
including the video. Okay,
Yeah.
right now. So others, can anyone of you share your screen? Because we have to work out on this, else you won't get others. You can stop sharing now. Ashita, Mahalakshmi, Swati.
Yeah, sure. I'll share my screen. Uh,
I shared my screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got an email, right?
Yes.
Yes, the same thing. So what you want to do here is click on modules.
Okay.
Yeah. So every day you can see that notes that is getting uploaded will be available here. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I stop sharing now?
Yes. Yes. So everyone are able to access this course. Please let me know. Except these two people.
yes, you could see the notes and you
Hmm,
could access it.
okay, fine. So let's begin our topic with introduction to testing. So before starting with any programming language, I want to understand what is your understanding on testing. Okay. So let's brush up few concepts that are required as a basic entry criteria. Then we'll start looking into your core area, which is nothing but our automation. Fine, everyone.
Yes.
Okay.
Check.
Uh, so so testing is a process of validating application in all the possible ways to identify a bug in a application so our major goal, our major motto is to hunt for a bug, is to identify a bug, is to validate if the given requirement is working as per the expectations or not. So that is the only sole job of you. You have to validate the application in all the possible ways and ensure that application is working as per your expectations or not. Point number one. Next one is what to validate and what needs to keep in my mind to validate a application. So to begin with the testing, I should know what I want to test. In any application, we need to understand what are the basic application components. So basically there will be 8 major web controls available. 8 major web controls available. First one we call it as text box. Second one we call it as a button. Third one we call it as a link. Fourth one we call it as a drop down. Fifth one we call it as radio button. Sixth one we call it as checkbox. Seventh one we call it as text, paragraphs, etc. Eighth one we call it as an image. So now without these 8 basic controls, there will not be any application exist. So if you see any application, if you look into any applications, right, without these 8 controls, there will now be application available. Okay, for instance, let's take an instance. So now here, what are the components that you can see here in this login panel? Can anyone confirm me? What are the components that we can see here? If you see here, we have 8 components, 8 controls available. On this login panel, can anyone of you tell me what are the controls that you can see out of this 8? First one, this is going to be called as your text. See here, text is one of the control. This one, point number 7. Login, this is also one of the text. Again, login, point number 7. Username, labels, this is also again a text. Username, text box, this is one of the control, which is the point number 1. Password, this is one of the web control, which is the point number 1. Login, this is the button, which is point number 2. Forget your password, this is a link, point number 3. There is a footer available, see at the bottom, this is a link. Okay, again point number 3. So let me log into the system. Okay, say suppose if I go to here, see here, all these components, without using these components, there will not be any application. Drop down, see here, point number 4. Again button, point number 2. Okay, so like this checkbox, see here we have checkbox, point number 6. Okay, so all these are going to be called as your web controls. So these 8 are going to be called as basic components, okay, which are major basic components. Without these 8 components, there will not be any application exists. Are you clear? Point number 1, what are the basic controls in a web application? Not a web application, any kind of applications. Anyone? Questions?
No, we are good.
Clear? Right? So
Yeah.
now, what to validate with these 8 controls, Pratap? I know about these 8 controls. What I want to validate on these 8 controls. Okay. So can anyone of you tell me what can we validate in a text box? Anyone? What you can validate on a text box? What can you validate on a button? What can you validate on a link, on a drop down, on radio button, on checkbox, on text, on image? So let's see what you can validate on a text box. So if I want to validate any text box, first of all, before you start validating any controls, understand the variety or understand the types of testing techniques you can apply. Types of testing techniques that you can apply. So when it comes to text box, first thing that you want to validate is UI display. So UI display is nothing but check if this control is physically exists in a given page under given section. So all I want to validate is this employee name is available under this leave list section. I want to validate if this available or not. Just to validate if this displayed or not. Just to validate whether this text box is displayed under this particular component or not. So that is nothing but your UI display. Sometimes based on application rules, there will be some rules applied on a field when to display and when to hide. For example, as an admin user, I should be able to see a text box on the application. Else I should not. So here the rule is if your user role is an admin user, you should be able to see these fields are displayed on the application, else you should not see the fields. So like this, there might be some rules available. Okay, so whenever you are going to validate any field, first thing that you have to ask them is, sir, is there any rule available to make this field to get display on the application or not? First basic question that you have to ask them. Make sense? Clear? Everyone about UI display?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so second thing is default value. So what is meant by default value? So whenever I open any application and if I go to that particular field, what is the default value that should get populated? For example, here see type for hints. This is the default text. Type for hints. This is the default text. If I type anything, the default text will go off. See here. Before this, we have type for hints. Okay. If I type anything, the default text will be removed. So what you want to do here is whenever you are going to launch an application, okay, and if you start validating it, ask is there any default value should get populated. Third one is data persistence. If I enter data and tab off, will the data get auto save or I need to save entire form? Means what do you mean by here? For example, I'm trying to add a user. I selected few things here. Okay. Now what I did here is for some reason I'm leaving this page. And again I came here. And again if I try to click on add, will the data will be auto saved or we have to save the entire form? So here the data is not saved. Only if I click on save, then only this entire form will get saved. If I refresh this page, the entire data will be leave. So you have to ask a question. So will the data will be auto saved or I want to click on save? If you want to click on save, what you want to do here is once you save this form, you come back and open and check still the data is available or not. So validating if the data is still available, validating if the data is going to be saved on tab off, validating the data is matching after save or not will fall under the category of your data persistence. Any question on data persistence? Anyone in the group? Any questions?
No.
Are you clear? Everyone? Right.
Yes.
Next one is field format. Guys, I don't know whether these things are covered in your manual testing or not. So, but these are essential for us. Okay. So now, fourth one that you want to validate is what? Field format. What do you mean by field format? Anyone? What do you mean by field format? Any idea? Field format? No? See here, some text boxes will accept only alphabets. It will not accept any other format. Okay. So what you want to do here is if you want to validate any text box, ask them what is the format of data that this text box will be allowed. Whether it is a alphanumeric, whether it is a numeric, whether it is only alphabets, you go and ask them. Check with them. They'll be giving the format of data. Okay. And you have to validate if that formats are working as per the expectations or not. Fifth one is Next one is mandatory field. Mandatory fields means if that field is really required, right? Every mandatory field should be represented with a star mark here. Can you see? There is a star mark. Can you see? Everyone, there is a
Yes.
star mark. So these are going to be called as your mandatory fields. Okay. So first thing that you have to validate is if this field is represented with a star mark or not. Then without entering any details, click on save. You should get an error saying that required. See here, can you, everyone? So this is going to be called as mandatory field check. This is going to be called as your mandatory field check. Second thing is, next one is field length property. What is the next one? Field length property. So what do you mean by field length property? If you have a text box, they'll tell you that, I'll show you. Yes, 1 second. Someone is knocking my door. 1 second. Where is this application? Or wait, I'll show you how it is look like. Don't worry about all this. This is not required for you. I'm just trying to show you how the field length will work. Okay, it's not required. So can everyone see my application here? Swati,
Yeah.
everyone? Yes.
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 So now I told you a default value. Can you tell me what is the default value in this text box?
Username.
Username. So how it will be available? So your developer will be giving an attribute called as value. So that is the value that you are seeing here. Okay. If you type anything, that should go off. But here it is not going. That is the issue. Okay. Because I didn't write any code on that. That is an issue. Okay. So now here I told you maximum of length is going to be 7 characters. I told you maximum length that you have to keep is how many? 7 characters. Okay, let's see that. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. I'm trying to type 8, but it is not allowing me. Why? Because there is a field length restriction available. There is a field length restriction available because the system is saying that you cannot enter beyond 7 characters. Beyond 7 characters. That is the reason we are seeing a issue there, not allowing that. So on any text box, you have to check is there any field length available or not. If there is any field length available, then you have to check boundaries or equivalence partition data testing. So don't worry about these techniques. I'll be covering these techniques in your workshops. Okay, so you have to implement any one of these techniques and you have to validate your field length property. Okay, next, 7th one that you have to keep here is impact. So what do you mean by impact? If I enter any data and if I save the form, we should understand and validate where this data will be shown. So for example, before this, what I did here, I went to my people and I have entered the username and password, correct? Before this, I went to these people and I enter my username and password. If I enter this username and password on this text box and if I click on next, the data should get reflect under this grid, under this table, and a email should be sent to the targeted person. So whether this data is moving correctly or not, whether this data is saving in other modules or not, that is what your impact. You have to check the impact on your application. Whenever you're going to fill any data into this text box, and if you save that particular form, where the data is going, where and all I can see this data that I entered into this text box. So that is called your impact. Clear? Anything? Any questions? Arshita, Mahalakshmi, Swati?
No, we are good.
So I don't know
No.
whether you people came across these techniques inside your manual testing, but it is necessary for me to cover this before I get started. No confusion? Clear?
Yes.
Okay. Now, for a button, what you can validate in a button? For button to validate, what you can validate? Now, can anyone tell me, based upon the previous one, how to validate a button?
Whether we are able to click it or not, and if
Okay.
we click
First,
it, what the action that is need to be performed.
yes. Before that, you have to check this again, UI display. Whether that button is displayed or not under a given section. On the given section, at this position, if this button is available or not. Second thing is, as you said, action, whether user is able to click on that or not. Fourth one is, you have to validate your button label. The label of the button should be always available with a plus symbol and a text called as people, like this. So you have to validate the text of the button. Next one is, enable or disable. So once you click on save button, or once you save your form, the entire field should be get disabled. Okay, so in such actions we'll be checking your enable or disable. Enable or disable. Next one is, you have to check your navigation. So if I click on this plus symbol where I am getting navigated, you have to validate whether a user is navigated to this add people section or not. Again, if the person is going to click on cancel, again if I click on this one, again it should get populate here. So this is called your navigation. You have to check your navigation. Correct? Clear? Any questions about your button?
No.
Yes.
Still.
Next, what you can validate on a link. What can you validate? Anything on a link. Link, first thing what you want to validate is text of the link. Second thing you have to validate is navigation. If you are going to click on, anything which is available as a link, okay, validate if you are navigating to the correct place or not. You have to validate it. So third one is visited link and non-visited links. Visited links and non-visited links. So for example, how can you validate the differences? Very simple. See, if I go to Google and if I click on my AI, now if you see here, I can see different links are available here. Can you see? Different links. Now if I click on this link, and if I come back, can you notice this? The color of the link, the text color of the link is getting changed from purple to blue, from blue to purple. Everyone, can you observe this? There is a change in the color. Now I'm going to click on this artificial intelligence, and if I go back, there is a change in the color. So visited links will always change in the color. Non-visited links will be available in the same thing. So you have to validate before click and after click the color is getting changed or not. Got it? Clear? Any questions? Arshita, Kausar, Mahalakshmi?
Yeah,
No.
it's clear.
Yeah?
No questions here.
Sorry?
Yeah, it's clear. No more questions.
Next thing, on your drop down, what you can validate on a drop down? So if you want to validate a drop down, first thing again you have to check is UI display. Next thing is valid options. Next thing is your valid options. If I go to any drop down, if I click on any drop down, okay, I have to validate what are the valid options. Next thing is default value. When I open an application and if I observe any drop down, what is the default value? Here the default value is select. Here the default value is select. Let me show you one more example. Here the drop down value is day. Here the drop down value, default value is month. So like this, for every drop down you have to ask that is there any drop down value available or not. Next thing is mandatory. If that field is mandatory or not, that you have to validate on your drop down. Next one is radio button. So again here on the radio button, what you want to validate is you have to validate your UI display. UI display. Okay. Next one is validate only one single option is selected. So for a radio button, you have to validate only one option is getting selected. Okay. Next thing you have to validate is option labels. So for this option, the label is female. For this option, the label is male. You have to validate your option values. Next one is mandatory field or not. You have to check your mandatory field or not. What is the next one? Checkbox. So checkbox also same thing. Validate one or more options is selected. One or more options is selected. Okay, so you have to check your option labels and check and uncheck if the user is allowed to check as well as uncheck. That is the next option that you have to keep in mind. Check and uncheck. You have to check whether the user is allowed to check or uncheck the checkbox. Okay, clear? So that is about your checkbox. Next one is text or paragraphs. Next one is text or paragraphs. So text or paragraphs, what you want to do here is you have to check your alignment, text wrapping. You have to check your alignment. Next one is text wrapping. So text wrapping is nothing but, for example, if you see if you are trying to enter any data, so the text is left justified here. Can you see here? Okay, it is not crossing your text box. It is not crossing the boundaries. All the data is getting wrapped up within these boundaries only. It is not getting or it is not crossing to the next section. Can you see this, everyone? So you have to check if the text is coming correctly or not. That is called your text wrapping. Next one is you have to check for your grammar checks. There should not be any spelling mistakes available. There should not be any spelling mistake should be available. Space check. For example, you have to validate the field name as username. But here username there is no any space available. You have to give a space. Okay. So there will be one more field called as due date. Sometimes the developer may forget to give a space. There should be a space available. So like that you have to check there is a space is missing or space is given extra. You have to check that. So like that on your text and paragraphs you will be validating this. Any questions? Arshita, Kausar,
No, we are good.
clear? Yeah.
No.
What is the last one? Image. So what you can validate an image? Again, UI display. For everything, UI display is going to be common. Okay. Next one is you have to check if the broken image or not. Broken image in the sense if there is no image available, for example, see here there is no text available. This is called a broken image. But if even if the image is not available, I want to show some text here. So whenever you are going to validate any image, just go and validate if the image is available. Even if the image is going to be broken, you have to check the alternative text is getting displayed or not. Got it? Clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So these are the checks that you have to keep in mind before you start validating any web controls. Okay. So with this, we'll take a break and I'll upload the session. Please go through this session. Tomorrow we'll start understanding the other new topics on this one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.